Well, welcome back to another episode of Becoming the CEO of Your Life. I am your host, Janeen, and today I have a pretty fantastic topic lined up for you. So today I'm going to be talking about the art of creating seamless transitions and how to use them to create more peace and use them to get into the flow of your day instead of just rushing from one thing to the next, feeling out of breath and feeling like you're playing catch up all the time. So if you have ever read Atomic Habit by James Clear, he talks about 1% improvement. If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. Go pick it up. It's a great read. But this week is a 1% tweak. So if you are surviving your life, I wouldn't really focus on transitions right now, but if you're in my program and you're looking to take it to the next level, this is the perfect episode for you today. So if you are somebody who is currently booking yourself too tight and moving from one thing to another at breakneck speed, I have a few of you specifically in mind today that I created this podcast for. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode today. But not only that, we are actually in a transition season right now. We're in the thick of fall. It is the end of October when this episode goes live. And we are, of course, transitioning from summer to winter. And so there's lots of transitional energy floating around in the air and in our atmosphere, lots of wind. In Ayurveda, we call this Vata energy. And with Vata, there's a lot of elements of space and wind, and we can feel even a little bit spacey sometimes. We don't feel grounded. We have a hard time remembering things. We get distracted really easily, maybe more than usual. If you're normally distracted easily, this is not your season of the year. So we're going to be adding a few tactical strategies as well, healthy things that you can do to help counter that energy and to help you feel more centered. And often during this season of the year, I teach a transition yoga class or two. Often there's themes in the classes that I teach. And I want you thinking about the way a yoga class flows. Even if you haven't ever taken a class, I'm sure that you've seen some yoga poses out there on the interwebs somewhere. But we often think about yoga as the poses or as the asanas, as we call them. And when I teach a transition class, I'm focused mainly on the movement between each pose because there is value, of course, in the transitions, and it's also part of the practice. So when I am teaching this way, I'm encouraging my students to make the transitions from one pose to the next as smooth and as graceful as they possibly can. Even if they wobble and fall over, it's part of embracing that experience and being like, okay, no judgment. We're just getting right back up and we're trying this again. So let me give you an example of this so that you can kind of see this and imagine this a little bit more. If you're visual like me, this might be helpful. So if you're in Tadasana or mountain pose at the top of the mat, both of your feet are together, you're just standing up straight. And if you're going to move into high lunge, the way that I would kind of cue this for my students, maybe not with all these cues, but I would cue them to float their right leg behind them, landing as gracefully as they possibly can on the ball of their foot in the back. And then I have them sink both knees down, and then they can inhale their arms up towards the ceiling as they continue to breathe. I'm imagining some of you, even as I was going through that whole explanation of moving from one pose to the next, some of you are holding your breath. So you want to continue to breathe. The transitions of your life, the transitions of yoga poses, whatever it is that you're doing, you want to be very mindful and intentional about the way that you are moving from one thing to another. You're not just like putting your foot back on the mat and moving into arms up in the air, right? There is a process of doing that, and you can slow yourself down and anticipate those transitions and make them useful in your life. So that's what we're talking about today. So why do we need to anticipate transitions? Because they happen, right? Because they happen. Some of you I know are in denial. I've seen some of your calendars. They're back to back to back to back all day long. Okay, that's not the way life works, right? It takes time to move and transition from working on your computer to making dinner, but your calendars don't often reflect that. And we end up getting really frustrated that sometimes it seems like things take longer than the time that you have actually allocated in your schedule because you're not anticipating these transitions. So anticipating transitions help us to smoothly move from one task to another without that feeling of being rushed or feeling overwhelmed or feeling like we don't have enough time, because it's all about reclaiming those little lost moments and turning them into opportunities for peace and productivity. One thing that I do want to say here is The transition energy actually takes away from the focus time. So some of you are in transition a lot more than you realize. So for example, if you have multiple tabs open on your computer because you first started off checking email and then you clicked on a link that took you over to Facebook. Now you're on Facebook and you're like, oh crap, I forgot I need to order this on Amazon. And then you're into something else. If you got all of those tabs open on your computer, you're losing a lot of momentum because you're in that transitional energy. You want to start and finish one project before moving on to the next thing. Okay, that's going to cut down on that. There's research on this. And it's actually incredible how much time is lost in transition and refocusing from one thing to the next. So on my computer, this is another way that you can kind of time hack this. I intentionally do not have many tabs open. In fact, I have my notes open and I have my Zoom open right now. And that's it. Everything else is closed down because this is all that I'm doing right now. Okay, so in these transitions, when they're intentional transitions, you want to use these as mindful moments. So you want to just kind of take a moment when you're transitioning, for example, from work to family time or from work to making dinner, for example. You want to take the transition to just remind yourself you're not in a rush. And so we can do that by getting centered and feeling grounded. So for me, that means I'm checking in. Do I need a bathroom break? Do I need to refill my water? Do I need to change the laundry over? Do I need to tidy up somewhere or clean up the dishes? This is why I'm never backed up on laundry, actually, is because I use my transitions time as kind of a reset time. It gives me time to breathe deeply, clear my mind before I'm getting into the next task at hand. This simple practice can drastically reduce stress, and it can actually improve your quality of your work and of your life because you're not in that headspace of go, go, go and rush, rush, rush all the time. Okay, the next thing that you want to be thinking about when you're focusing on your transitions is actually time blocking in that time to transition. So if you've got on your calendar these time blocks of when you're working and when you're making dinner and when you're getting kids ready for bed or getting them ready for school or whatever it is, and you're not blocking in that transition time, it's going to feel like we're slammed all day, every day, right? And that's what we want to avoid. So you want to schedule in these zones of transition into your day. Give yourself like 10 minutes. It kind of takes me back to high school when we had like 5 or 10 minutes to transition from one class to a next. Okay, that's kind of the way that you want to be thinking about scheduling your time. So when I schedule my day, I actually allocate specific time blocks for tasks, and then I add buffer zones in between. So these buffer zones give you that breathing space in your life. Your life is going to feel more relaxed. And even I would say my life feels a little bit luxurious because I do this for myself. And I know you just heard me say that and be like, well, wouldn't that be nice? But listen, you have the time to do this for yourself. I promise you. And you're actually going to make yourself even more focused and more productive in the time that you're getting to work. So there's no more rushing from one meeting to another. I want you to just focus on scheduling in that buffer time this week. And don't allow yourself to work through that buffer time. Don't push it to the edge where you're like, okay, I've got this 5-minute break, but I'm just going to push it until 30 seconds before I actually have to transition, because then you're rushing through that transition again. So just trust me on this. Instead of viewing transitions as dead space, you want to see them as essential moments to reset. It's kind of like your secret superpower, to be honest. You want to make a short to-do list for each of your transitions. And for me, this is just kind of automatic at this point. But you want to have clear goals if you're starting this out for the first time when moving between activities. So like I said, you write down, use the bathroom, take a couple of deep breaths. I make some tea for myself. I often am downstairs like brewing a new cup of tea or a pot of Creo brew or something for myself in between transitions. I'll even do this like this morning, for example, I was working on email content for a sales funnel that I was building. And then I was moving into a coaching call, and then I was moving into podcast content. So even in between these specific tasks, I'm getting up, I'm moving around, changed the laundry, made some tea, like all the things that I'm telling you. I also do like a clean sweep of the house. So I am sometimes doing the dishes. I'll get the ingredients out for dinner so that I'm set at 5:30 and do that for my future self so I'm ready to go. The way that I like to think about it is just kind of like a mental reset. This helps me to kind of clear the slate for the next thing. I use it more as a meditative moment to, again, center myself and become present with what I have going on. Okay, the last little tip here, when you're starting to incorporate intentional transitions into your life, is you always want to reflect and adjust any new systems that you're bringing in to your productivity plan on how you can become more peacefully productive. So you want to take a few weeks to just focus on transitions and tweak this process as you go. So don't just listen to this podcast and think, okay, that was nice, but actually work on this. So reflect at the end of your week. Like, how did it go with the transitions? Are you noticing that the transition time is helping you to make 1% improvements, not only in your overall life, but how are you going to make 1% improvements just on the transitional process itself? So what went well, what didn't go well, and how can you make this a smoother process for yourself? Of course, you're going to have to adjust your schedule and your transition practices accordingly based off of the feedback and the information that you are gaining as you're practicing this new system. So this constant improvement will lead to more peace, and I promise you it will lead to more productivity in your life. So the last way, like I mentioned earlier with all of the yoga stuff that I shared at the beginning of the podcast, the last way that I want to kind of help you to ground in this season of transition and to gain more focus and clarity in your life, because for a lot of you, you're out of balance with that vata energy. Like I mentioned, the air and space energy that you might be experiencing in your life. So here are a few things that I do to help me to physically and emotionally ground. So I love my weighted blanket at this time of year. So I sleep under it. Sometimes in the middle of the afternoon, I'll just go take 10 minutes and get back under my blanket as part of that transition. I will drink warm liquids. Like I mentioned, I'm brewing herbal tea. I'm doing my Creo brew. All of that helps me to ground because it's warming. Warm foods as well. And I know that oftentimes in the wintertime, we talk about comfort foods, but I want you to really intentionally look for healthy options, right? Because oftentimes we go for heavier food, for comfort food that has a lot of dairy, that has a lot of meat in it, that does feel heavy, but it's not the best for your health. So look for things like soups or hearty foods that have like root vegetables and stuff in them, like, for example, a vegetarian shepherd's pie or something like that. I also really, really love candles and lighting my fire, and all of those things kind of help me feel cozy and grounded this time of year. All right, you guys. So there you have it. That's what I have for you today. I've shared 5 fantastic ways to anticipate transitions and to create more peace and better productivity in your busy life. It's all about turning those in-between moments into opportunities for growth and grounding. So thank you so much for tuning into the Becoming the CEO of Your Life podcast today. I hope that you found today's episode valuable. Remember, peaceful productivity is totally within your reach. And with these transition tips, you're just one step closer. So if you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. I'd also love to hear your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes. So if you'd like to learn how to become more peacefully productive in your life, I would love it if you reached out to me. So you can do that by booking a call with me at janeenalley.com/CEO, or you can send me a direct message on Instagram at Janeen Alley Coaching. All right, until next time, be well, my friends. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk to you next time. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.